CLCUC 6 2 take 1. You're an idiot, Steve.
Wow, I didn't do anything.
Okay, guys, here we go. In 5 seconds.
Our guest today here on Comic Cuts is Ravi Swami, who is an animator who's come down here to chat about his work to us. Welcome to the programme, Ravi. Thanks for coming on to Comic Cuts. Now, you're an animator, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And do you work freelance or do you work for a particular company?
I'm a freelance.
Uh-huh. So that means that anybody could ring you up and ask you to do a particular
Yep.
job for them?
That's right.
And how did you get into being an animator? Is it easy to get into?
Well, I mean, I started off making films at home with 8mm.
Yeah.
On a kind of rostrum that I'd made. And it started off before that with flick books.
Yeah.
That everybody does in the corner of an exercise book or something.
Right.
And that's how I got into it.
Now, a few weeks ago we had somebody on the programme who explained to me a little about cutout animation, and that's become a lot clearer. But something that keeps cropping up is cell animation, and I don't know what that is, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little about it. I mean, how does something start off and become an animated programme, like He-Man we have on Comic Cuts? How do they end up with a finished product like that?
Well, you can break it down into several stages, basically. You start off with a series of drawings that are the animation, and they're all done on registered paper
Is this,
by an animator.
What's this you brought along here?
That's actually a layout. It's called a layout. It shows the relationship between the characters that you're going to animate and the backgrounds that they're going to go against.
So this is a background for
it
a
would
particular...
become a background. Yep.
Yeah. So you get a background, and then what's the next stage? What do we do with that? Is that painted or...?
Yeah, the background is painted while the animation's being done, because it all has to be done kind of at the same time. But yeah, it then goes off to somebody, a background artist, who'll then do a full colour version of that.
So if I take this off, we have here, this is not the same picture, but this is another of the backgrounds that is now painted, is it?
Yep.
So we've got to this stage. Now, what about if we want to put some characters in that particular... This is painted on, is it?
Yeah, that's right. It's painted onto just paper, really.
Yeah, and it's ordinary paints?
Yeah, watercolour or inks.
And how long would it take for somebody to do that, do you think?
Well, an experienced background artist could do something like that in a day. They usually have to turn out... I mean, you've got something like 6 weeks to make a commercial, so they have to produce... maybe, in that case, I think there were 18 backgrounds in that time.
So if we've got a background, now we want to, say, put a character in it, what's the next stage?
Well, all the animation drawings have to be put onto what are called cells, which are transparent sheets of plastic. And the reason for that is that then you can have your character and superimpose it against any background.
I see. So if we just look over here, these are actual characters from something else you've worked on.
Yeah.
Now, what are these drawn on? They're just on paper, are they?
These are actually drawn on cells. They're paper, the drawing's underneath, and what you're seeing there in colour is actually on acetate, and it's been traced with kind of wax crayon and painted on the back. And that's how it ends up looking like that, and that is a kind of general indication of what an animation cell looks like when it's...
So that's the cell when we talk about cell animation?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a background, we've got a character. So we want to... If you've brought this along, if I just hold this up and see what it looks like together. Now, this character is not... He's actually... Can I get down here?
Yeah, sure.
Ah, no, I can put my hand down there. So what's this on? Is that paint or...?
That's ink. That's drawn with a dip pen, and I mean, you don't normally get that amount of detail on an animation cell. Normally it's just an outline. On He-Man, for example, it's just a coloured outline and different colours painted on the back.
I see.
But
so is that
indication of
one frame of a film now?
Yeah.
And that would be taken?
That's right.
Now what if in the next frame he moves, doesn't he?
Yes.
So is another one painted? Ah, so we can use the same background?
You can use the same background, but the cell changes.
And this is the cell?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's another one's painted?
Right.
And put on top?
Yep. Well, that one's actually taken off and the next one's put down, so...
I understand it at last. It's wonderful how it's all put together. How do you fancy doing as a hole in the wall in a few moments?
Okay.
So that'll be great.
Right.
You want a slate animating it, don't you?
You better talk us through it while you're doing it, or I'll carry on.
And you're only recording
okay.
once you go past naught, right?
Want me to do it while
so I've
you're
got
actually
to
talking?
stick in the selector.
If you can do.
Okay, go on.
Okay.
I'll sort of ask you what you're drawing.
Yeah.
If it's one of your favourite
Stand by,
characters
please,
or something
gentlemen.
you've done before.
Carry on.
Yeah.
I've wanted to know that for ages.
3, take 1. 2.
Well, Ravi has kindly agreed to fill our hole in the wall for us. So, Ravi, what are you going to be drawing for us?
Well, it's just a little character that I kind of developed. I haven't actually used it in anything yet, but it's just a little character.
Right, if you want to fire away.
Okay.
What kind of character is this? Is it an animal or a human
It's actually
being?
kind of a robot, I suppose.
A robot?
Yeah.
So, do you sort of... Have you always got characters in mind that you're always sort of thinking, this is a good character, perhaps I could be able to use it one day?
Yeah, yeah. You tend to anyway. I mean, you tend to... sort of different styles and things
Mm-hmm.
that you might see, having looked at other people's work.
Yeah.
And
So,
I mean, generally, you wouldn't actually draw a character this quickly for a cartoon.
I'm sure, yeah.
It's all drawn with pencil first.
I know everybody comes in here for the hole in the wall and they sort of rattle these things down, then they sit back and say, oh, I could have taken half an hour over that.
Yeah.
So, in your job as an animator, what is the sort of job that you spend most of your time doing? I mean, is it drawing or is it presumably moving the characters that we were talking about
That's
before
right.
as an animator?
That's right.
Yeah.
So most of the work that you do is actually making the characters move,
Yeah.
which means you draw everything on vast amounts of paper, and that's basically it. But you can't actually do it from scratch. Everything has to be planned quite carefully beforehand because you've got such a short amount of time to work in, especially if you're working on a commercial, that you have to kind of work with the guy who's done maybe the layouts and the designs and all the rest of it.
Right. Well, I keep distracting you here from your drawing. How much do you think over the years the sort of techniques of animation have changed? I mean, are they still like they were when sort of Walt Disney started making his full-length films in the 30s, or have they changed a lot?
They have. In fact, more techniques are becoming more acceptable. I mean, if you actually, the technique that Walt Disney used to do animation is still the standard, really.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way animation is still being made now. Even a lot of what you think is computer animation is in fact done the traditional way. It just looks different.
I was going to mention computers. Do they play a big role in it now, these days?
They are playing a bigger role now. I mean, gradually it's becoming more acceptable to use computers.
And can they ever really replace, you know, the efforts put in by man himself?
I don't think so, actually. There will come a time, I suppose, when you can create characters. In fact, there's even a video out where they've used computer-generated characters, pop video.
Yeah.
But it takes a long time, and you can't get the fluidity that you can with the drawing. The computer just can't do that yet. You can do things like in-betweening, which is doing some of the drawings, but you still have to have somebody there to do the original drawing,
Right.
person, really.
So I'm sorry, I keep distracting you all the time while you're trying to draw this.
Yeah.
Pop and adverts are a big thing, aren't they, these days for animation? What if you were working, say, on an advert and you come up with this brilliant idea? How can you sort of copyright that and say, that's my idea and I don't want anybody else to use it? Is that possible as an animator?
It's not really, no. In fact, everything you do is, if you're working as a freelance, everything you do is owned by a studio or an advertising agency, because they're actually commissioning the work and they're paying the money for it.
Yeah.
So in fact, they're actually paying for your artwork. And it doesn't really matter whether you do 1,000 drawings, which is what you do in an animation commercial. They still own all of them.
Does this mean that there's loads of brilliant animators all over the place and they don't actually own anything?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, they don't have any artwork that belongs to themselves?
That's right, yes.
That's incredible. But I suppose that's what the people pay for,
Yep.
the agents and people like that. If you keep drawing away there, whilst I'm distracting you. Actually, what we'll do is, if you want to carry on that while we watch our episode of He-Man,
Okay.
and you can carry on, and we'll feature that at the end of the programme.
All right.
So I'd like to thank you for coming on to Comic Cuts.
Thank you.
It's been great to see you, and I'm really pleased that you've managed to explain that cell animation to me, and I hope everybody at home understood it as well.
Okay.
So thanks a lot, and I hope I'll see you again.
Right.
Okay, let's watch another episode of He-Man, and later on we'll be able to see Ravi's hole in the wall when it's been completed. So, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Too short? All right.
No,
Never got onto this. Sorry. I felt that I didn't want to sort of